I love this. Oh my, that's got to be one of the. This has got to be one of the better ones. I mean, I that's over the top. I love it.
Oh, that stupid song is actually in my playlist. Every once in a while,
This is the song?
yeah.
Pretty good. Pretty good.
Look at that.
I didn't know there was like a second verse to it like that. I
Yeah.
just only knew the first part, but it was pretty good.
Sorry, Evan. I'm going to fiddle with my microphone for a minute. Okay, I'm done. I won't touch it.
Okay.
Promise.
Well, I don't know if we'll get in trouble, but we got to figure out a way to sample that for the future intro song.
Yes.
Well, I think singing it would be okay. Maybe like putting the mic on the actual
You know
one,
what
but
we'll do?
it's under 10 seconds. I think you can do a 10-second.
We're going to cut his cut.
Yeah.
That is the new intro song.
That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah.
Thanks,
Oh
Dad.
man, my West Michigan reputation is just really just taking a spiral. With each one
You're
of
like, I'm
these.
going to have to move.
We were really thinking about going with you, but man, we saw your podcast.
Second thoughts now.
Yeah. Well, guys, I just want to talk about your AI experiences and the crazy shenanigans you've been up to. I've heard some indirect stories about things that you've done. I just know that there's a monster over there that you guys built, or maybe it's in the basement now.
It's in the basement.
So you guys want to tell people what you built?
You start us.
Well, sure. I kind of found out from the grapevine that Josh had purchased some hardware here. Like I heard rumors about like GPUs and a motherboard and that this was going to be used like for some AI initiative, whatever. And
I was
so
building a tractor, to be clear.
right. And so I pinged Josh on it, and he's like, "Yep." I thought maybe we could do an on-premise AI machine. So that we could experiment with AI and load it up with our own large language models and generative stuff and diffusers and all that kind of good stuff. And so I came in. I'm like, hey man, I'd really like to help like piece that together because I kind of like to tinker around.
I invited you in.
Yeah, and so I came in here and. Laying in the office, like the floor is just covered. I'm thinking like maybe a little, like a desktop kind of thing with maybe like one card in there. But no, there's like six of these NVIDIA 3090s, which are each like 24 gigs, right? So they can hold quite a bit of large language model in them. And there's no way these things are going to fit in like a normal desktop, like tower or whatever. And we didn't have to because Josh basically bought a rack space on wheels. This thing is enormous.
Yeah.
So it's all this space that we can kind of shove this thing in and put all the pieces in and the motherboard. And he bought 10 fans, 10 to keep it cool.
12.
12. Okay, I'm glad. And so from a hardware standpoint, it was just ridiculous. There's just wires and cables and power supplies and fans. And so we just started to get to work putting this thing together and getting it in the box. And it doesn't fit. Even with this massive box,
There were complications.
we can't get everything put in this thing. And so mainly due to the cooling tower, which is probably as tall as the box itself. I mean, it's just an enormous heat sink that sits on top of the CPU. And so we ended up, or I should say Josh did some research, and we found a water-cooled heat sink that had a much lower profile. So then everything got shoved in there. And then we turned it on, and it was interesting, and I can talk about this forever, so you just need to interject. Otherwise, I'll just finish the whole story.
Oh, there's more. There's more to talk about.
But I know that, Josh, you had some troubles with getting the GPUs to, like show up and appear because it's just a little atypical of how you would, put something like this together. But once we were able to address the CPUs and load the large language model on there, we were both like, well, this is great. We're going to run a prompt through it.
This is hilarious.
And this thing will just be blazing fast, right? But it's like cool, and it's all local.
For all our viewers that are not technical, let me explain a few things. What we were trying to do is our customers like some of our customers are scared of AI, right? So like because they're scared of AI, which rightfully so. If you go to ChatGPT, there's been leaks. Like there's employees that have put plans out there. They've been leaked, and so our thought was having an AI lab would keep some security around us owning the data, playing around with it.
Privacy, client
privacy. And so we started, if you look up ChatGPT, there's a whole initiative called Open LLMs, which are local LLMs that you can install, but they require such beefy hardware to run. Hence what we did.
Right.
So setting the stage a little bit.
Yeah, thank you for that. That's good. Kind of glossed over that. A large language model, hence the name, are usually gigabytes in size. So a typical graphics card will have between, like, let's say 8 and 24 gigabytes on it at max for consumer level graphics cards, right? I mean, you can get industrial strength ones, but you're going to pay 20 grand for them, right? And these cards that we're talking about are running around 2K, brand new, $2,000 or less if you can get them on the market where people don't, they moved on to something else. But the language model, the open source one, let's say, that is as close to ChatGPT 3.5, maybe 4, requires about 90 gigabytes of space. And so obviously that's not going to fit on one card that has 24 gigs. And so hence the need for 4, which gives you 96 gigabytes, right? And so you essentially distribute the large language model across each of these boards. And then the CPU takes care of coordinating the tokens. And I know I'm getting into vernacular here that we can explain later, but it basically coordinates the instructions into each of these GPUs, and then you get the answer out. In any case, these are very, very fast. I mean, this whole machine is ridiculously fast. If you were to use it for something like Fortnite, let's say, it would probably use a quarter of the power that this thing has. I mean, you could just render. I mean, you could do Toy Story on this thing. Just render the movie. So we're thinking we're going to get the same response with the AI when we prompt it for something. Tell me the capital of France. Something simple. Tell me a joke.
We might need to censor the results of what came out.
Right. Oh, this is funny. Yeah. So I'm glad you brought that up. I'll let you tell that story. But the response was like 20 seconds. Like, what's the capital of France? And it loads up the model, and then you're watching the GPU cycles and everything, and everything's maxed out. And I mean, it is thinking. It's thinking, and it's thinking. And it's like, and then the response is like, the capital of France is France. And you're like, well, that's just wrong. But there were some other interesting things as we were trying.
We were using some open source technologies to run. So there's a ton of stuff you could do a whole podcast on. If your audience was developers, they would love it. And so there's all these libraries that people have built, and one of them is called oobabooga. Oobabooga. Yeah. So
oobabooga.
Yeah. If you look that up on GitHub, it is open source. You can use it. It will run open LLMs. It is similar to ChatGPT that provides a chat interface, but it's like all of the customization. Yeah, this is it. All of the customization is there that you can actually set up, configure.
Right.
And so the funny thing is like we set this thing up, and you can choose. It'll help you download large language models, and that's oh my goodness, remind me of the repo that it downloads them from.
Hugging Face.
That's it, Hugging Face. So that's another tech, another company in which there's actually quite a bit of investors that are invested in this company. It's like Open LLM. They host all the Open LLMs. Facebook's on there. We use Llama 2 from Facebook.
Yeah, and, Open Orca, Microsoft stuff is on there.
Open Orca. And what's funny is we downloaded it and installed it and got it configured, ran an API command through it. The thing was, because it wasn't configured right with all the settings, swearing like a sailor.
Right.
I mean, it was like...
They call this hallucinating.
Unhinged.
The AI term, right?
Yeah, and I was like so shocked at the responses. It's like, F this. Like, I'm just like, holy moly.
Like, yeah, I asked it, like, tell me a joke, and it said something, I'm not your bleep to bleep, worker. Don't tell me what to do. And I'm like, oh, man.
Wait, it's alive.
Yeah. So, that was pretty interesting. And so Josh and I kind of took it from two different approaches. I had been working with large language models on a programmatic level, project prior to us setting up this thing. And so I need to be able to not go through the consumer interface, which I call oobabooga, where you type it in, or like ChatGPT, you go through the browser, you use something like Python or Node.js, you use code to send the prompts and set up the tokens and all this kind of stuff. And I thought, well, I'll come at it from that direction and see if I can figure out why our model is running so slow. And then from your side, you were working with that consumer interface, which has a lot of dials and levers and things that you can tweak, but a little more consumer friendly and formalized, right? So then one of us was going to have a breakthrough eventually, right? And prior to this, before we had loaded this up, I had experienced where if I sent a prompt into a particular model, it would take longer than if I sent in the prompt using the provided, like the recommended template for the prompt. Now, with ChatGPT and oobabooga, you don't think about the template. You just say, well, I want to ask it a question, and then behind the scenes, it might format it in a special way. It may change that prompt and deconstruct it a little bit and send it into the model. So you don't really think about this, but when I followed the recommended template for this model, everything really sped up, but I'd kind of forgot about that. But then I came in on a Friday, we were talking, I'm like, we were trying different things and we hadn't had any breakthroughs and we're just really frustrated with this because we know how we have all this power. And we're like, well, we're kind of resigning ourselves, so this is just going to be slow. Maybe we...
I wasn't. I was like, this will work.
I gave up. I gave up and I was just going to go home. But I'm like, we're using the llama model. Maybe we should use the llama template for the prompt. And so in oobabooga, I know I'm saying that wrong, oobabooga, we selected the Llama 2 template for the prompt. And it's fairly sophisticated. I mean, if you look at it, what a mess if you had to actually send the prompt in that way.
And when you are thinking of a template, for those that are in the audience, like when you're typing in something in ChatGPT, what we mean is when you type it in, behind the scenes, it might add text instruction, prepend it or append it. So if you say, tell me a joke, behind the scenes, what is sent to ChatGPT might not be tell me a joke. It might say, perform the following instructions, and then below it, tell me a joke.
Right.
So there's some formatting depending on the model.
Yeah. And there may be preludes to the prompt, like you are a helpful assistant, or you are a helpful assistant based on
context.
It gives it a context. It seems kind of strange, but it sets it up. And then it may actually have places in the prompt where the response should be.
Yeah.
So it's like, as I was saying, it sort of deconstructs it. And then when it tokenizes that, which is basically, it takes that prompt and that template and turns it into something that's more friendly to the model, sends it into the model. The model then is trained and knows how to interpret those tokens in a faster way. It's just optimized for that.
Yes.
And so we went from something like 2 tokens a second. So if I explain, if you have a prompt like, what is the capital of France? That might be 3 tokens, let's say. If you have a long paragraph that you've got an explanation, that might be 200 tokens, right? So the bigger the prompt, the more tokens there are, which then correlates to how fast you get the response. So I could do 2 tokens per second, or, for this 200 token thing, if it returned in 5 seconds, that means I had 22 tokens per second.
In layman's terms, token is almost equivalent to a word.
Almost, yeah. Yep. And so we were getting sub-second token response, which is slow. That's like, if I'm able to do like half a token a second, and I have 200 tokens, takes a long time. It can take up to 20 seconds. When we made this prompt change, it went from 2 to like 20, 25 tokens per second, which is on par for that model.
Yes.
And in my own experience on a Mac, where I loaded a much smaller model because I only have 24 gigs on that, and we can get into that, I went from like 5 tokens per second up to 65 tokens per second on some of the smaller, like Orca Mini and some of those other models. So that prompt template is key.
It's important. Yeah.
To making sure you're interacting with the model correctly.
There's a bunch of settings in oobabooga that, like parallelization of GPUs and all this stuff. But if you're looking to do your own AI lab setup, I think we'll have to do like a write-up on our blog to give, we could give probably hardware instructions of like what we purchased and like what we had set up and configured. But we learned a lot.
Yeah.
I mean, like through the process. Oh my gosh.
It's definitely doable. And there's another open source one out there called GPT4All, the number 4All. And they sort of specialize in large language models that have been quantized, which basically means shrunk. So they take a large model and they sort of compress it so that it'll fit on, there you go, it'll fit on your own PC or your own Mac.
Yeah.
So if you want to have an experience where you're chatting and got those privacy settings and you're not working with open AIs, you can load these up.
Yes.
And they actually are now working with the M1 architecture, M1, M2. So these can run on a Mac, on the Mac Metal, as we call it, right? So
the advantage of the Mac, like the M1 series, is the fact that the RAM is shared with the CPU and the GPU.
Right.
Which is actually pretty helpful when it comes to like running models like this.
Right. Yep.
So GPT4All, the nice thing, if you do oobabooga, which is actually a web hosted platform, it's a server. And then if you do GPT4All is really just like an app, right? It's like an app that you can download different models, the same models that we're talking about, like Orca you mentioned, Mistral, all Snoozy, all these. Like if you go to Hugging Face, it's a whole repository of all these. There's a lot of the models and their performance benchmarks. But yeah, you see Llama down there, the Llama models from Meta. So like there's 7 billion parameters. Those are the B's at the end are kind of the billions of parameters which in the model, what it's been trained against. Yep. The more more parameters, the higher fidelity, I'll say, of the model. Meaning like the more precise, the better, usually better responses. But the technology is out there actually getting really good to where these small parameter models are just continually getting better and better and better and better and better. And then furthermore, the quantized models, there's now technology to where they've learned how to compress it with very minimal amount of side effects. It's kind of like a zip file, right, on your computer. It's like compress it, and it's like they can take a 70 gigabyte size model and then compress it to half of that. Right. You know, it's like, which is what we did.
And really, technically, what they're doing is they're taking the precision out of the.
That's right.
Like the large language model that's 96 gigs is the 32-bit.
Yes.
Let's say, and so they compress that down to 8.
Yep.
Or 16 or 4.
Yes.
But then you lose some. You know, each time you do that, you lose. Just like if you're compressing an image.
JPEG.
You know, if you have a big JPEG image and then you do it too far, then you start seeing degradation. So the same concept would apply to a large language model. But if you're careful, you know, and you do it right, then you don't see that degradation.
Yes.
And then you can fit it into a smaller space.
But the Llama 2 70 billion parameter is on par with ChatGPT 4. So like for those that have used ChatGPT, you're like we're talking about, this is not even listed as 70 billion parameter, 70. That is just too big to run on consumer hardware, which is why we run it on a big AI lab, you know, so we can provide instructions on how to do that. But
gotcha. So GPT4All wouldn't include that because GPT4All is going to be
They don't
consumer.
Yep.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. Consumer hardware, anything that's kind of standard. Like our server, the specs is like 256 gigs of RAM, 24 cores, 4 GPUs that are the top of the line GPUs. So it's like and the funny thing is it's a beefy server, but it's nothing in comparison to what like OpenAI is using to train and run their models. It's like it blows my mind how much hardware is needed to run these.
Right. When you consider how many consumers are hitting that site, they just must have a massive bank
yes.
of GPUs.
And there's a whole ecosystem of shrinking these models, like we were talking about with the small billions of parameters. Because the thought would be is they want to put them on edge devices like your phone. Mm-hmm. And like just about 2 weeks ago, there was did you see that someone identified that Apple had created their own large language model that can fit on a device? So they're constantly shrinking them and seeing if they can fit on smaller and smaller devices.
Well, did you guys see this statement from Zuckerberg about
I have not.
their plans? So you guys would know what this means better than me. But
Yeah,
this
the
is
H100s, those are like coming in at 20 grand a piece.
Yes, they are.
Yeah,
Yep.
so they're-
350,000
Yes,
of those.
that's this year that they're going to have that many. Up
That's
and running.
That's
Crazy.
incredible. Yeah, billions of dollars. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, to train a large language model is billions of dollars. Like only these big companies can train these large language models.
But they're committing to keep everything open source and accessible for everyone.
That's awesome.
You still need the hardware to make use of it, and then I imagine they'll have the smaller models at 7B and even less.
Yes.
For the average person. But yeah,
So one of the things I think would be cool to talk about too is your use case and then my use case of like, because we have two different use cases for how we want to leverage this.
Yep.
And so without using customer names, maybe we can, because you're using some on customer projects, maybe you can give some generic thoughts on how you're using it.
Right. So I had mentioned before that I need to access the model programmatically because I'm doing iterative stuff while I'm interacting with the model, right? So I'm basically going out and mining data, let's say. And this data that's out there is sometimes very structured in the sense that I can pull that data in and I can then transform it to what I need so then we can work with it. But often is the case, the data is unstructured. It's just sort of out there, and it can be in a different format for each case where you go out and you find this particular subject matter, right?
So as an example, that's, I will say, different industry, hotels. There's like occupancy dollars per night, right?
Right. I would liken it more like say Verbo or Airbnb,
Sure.
where you might have a site that you may have a number of large vendors out there, like a hotel, let's say, and they're very structured. So Hilton, it's like you can book a Hilton, and they have a very structured way how they present their data. But me, as just a hillbilly up north, right, with a cabin in the woods, and I'm there 1 week out of the year. I want to rent this thing out. I might prop up my own page and say, hey, I got a site that now I got a place that you can book. Now you might, as that consumer, be able to go to an Airbnb and say, hey, I want you to use my stuff. But a lot of them don't, right? So in that context, there's still a lot of inventory out there, a lot of data that's unstructured by mom and pop people, like myself, have propped up this website.
created GeoCities site.
Right. A blue background with red lettering.
Yes.
Right. And so those opportunities, that inventory out there is often overlooked and ignored because you can't get it. It would take a person to go there and look at that and say, or give them a call.
Here's
and
the
try to
price. Here's
extract,
this.
right,
Yeah.
and then get it into the right slot. And so we were ignoring it too, and then it just sort of crossed our minds like, well, this would be a case for AI. AI could do this because you can give a block of text to AI and ask it to extract out the particular information you want, if present, and even extrapolate or infer the information if it's not present, right? Just based on the words and how the inventory or whatever is presented. And so we started to try this and experiment with it, and the results were just getting better and better. And so now it's like, well, I can't, if you're bootstrapping something, I can look at that information on that web page, let's say, and put it into ChatGPT. But that's not automated. I can't do that for, 3,000 pages that are out there or whatever. So let's program that to actually go get the data and then run it through the large language model, the AI, and get the results out, get it structured, and then turn it on. And that's what we did. And it is running. It just runs and extracts this information and gets it structured up. Now, it's interesting, too, though, that there's different types of models that, hope that's not coming through. Let me cancel that. Depending on the type of model, you might get back a conversational response to that data, which is another sort of a blocker for my use case. I don't want a conversational response from it. Like, say, here's the data, and be like, okay, well, I found this for you, and I think you'll be happy about it. Like, no, I need this to be in a CSV format or a JSON format, and enough with the running commentary.
Pleasantries.
Right, and it has been very difficult to get the model to behave, as it were.
Yes.
Now, there's different kinds of models out there. There's ones that are called instruct models or text generation models. There's ones that are conversational. But those are still not as far along as something like Llama, which is more that conversational kind of thing. It still does a better job at what I need it to do. But I still run into cases where, I can say, present this to me in a CSV format, and it'll do it 90% of the time. But there's that 10% where it'll be like, nah, I'm just going to say, I'm really tired of this. I'm tired of working today, and I don't want to do this anymore.
Thad lays the hammer. AI is going to be the first thing to come after Thad when it comes alive because you're ordering it to do things.
Right. So you do have to tell it in the prompts. It's like, don't talk back. Don't be conversational. Just do what I tell you to do.
I don't know if I can make this big enough for people to see, but this was a conversation that Thad was having with us in Slack, complaining about.
Right. Yeah. So the thing's coming back and say, sure, here's the horsepower of the engine, 200 horsepower. I'm like, I didn't ask you to prefix it with anything.
Just shut up and give me the horsepower. So this came through, and I didn't have the whole context. So you guys were just going back and forth on this day about what to do. And I didn't know you were talking about horsepower as an attribute of the response. I thought you were just saying like that was your code word for like give me the meat of this or give me the important stuff. Because I just kept seeing you tell the agent like give me the horsepower, give me the horsepower,
More power.
Just shut up and give me the horsepower.
But I think a lot of the prompt too is some people with this type of context, if we're just manipulating data, would be like, why would you want your own AI lab? Well, when we ran the numbers, because you were using at volume, right? You were running tons of queries, tons of tokens. When you look over the course of a week, we're talking like $700 to like run this thing over a week.
Right.
And so it's like, when you do the math, you're like, this is going to be expensive to extract this data on a consistent basis. And so that was probably the big driver to be like, we should just get our own AI lab so we don't have to pay up all these tokens, because all of these online services pay on a per token basis. So that's the thing, is the more words in your input and the response, the more you're paying. So
yeah, and something like a data extraction ETL process like that with AI injected in between, it can run away from you in a big hurry.
Yeah.
I mean, because you're not monitoring. If you're given a destination and you get data from that, you're not seeing how much data is on that page or whatever it happens to be.
yes.
Yeah.
So
I was going to ask you guys to boil this down to, rules of thumb for when you should go from just using what's available consumer-wise to then doing something like GPT4All running on your Mac to then doing an AI lab. Like these are three
Different approaches.
very different approaches. So what would be a rule of thumb to know when to move from one to the next?
I think I'll talk, and then I'll let you'll add color commentary and your own thoughts. I think if you look at those three buckets, Chat GPT is actually great for most things. I think if you can lean into using that it's the other two edge cases would be if you're using your own GPT4All. If you're at an organization, here's a great use case. If you're at a KPMG, you're at a large organization that blocks Chat GPT, doesn't want you using it, and you want your own personal thing, GPT4All works great. So, and if the server model is really the use case we didn't hit on. You hit on one of your use cases of using it for manipulating this data. The use case that we're moving towards at City is we're wanting to have a repository of all customer learnings and also customer interviews. We do customer interviews, competitive analysis, market analysis, and we're just learning a ton about our customers' businesses. But we don't want that data in the public, and we also want all that data accessible and shared among our team. So now you're looking at a server model, which is why the AI lab, so that Thad, you have that same access to the data I do, Bryce does, we all do.
Right.
So that might be another option. But if you're talking those, in my mind, if you want your own data and you're just playing with all the stuff locally, GPT4All, like great option.
Right.
The kind of the oobabooga, like AI lab, it's a weird name. Then that would be like shared across team members and you own the data and all that stuff.
Right.
So
yeah, I agree with all of that. And it's not that OpenAI ChatGPT doesn't have a programmatic interface. They have a RESTful interface that you can interact with to send prompts and so on. But you're paying for that.
Yes.
That's where it's like if you need it just depends on how much you want to spend. I mean, you can, if you
Yes.
don't want to deal with the infrastructure and setting it up, ChatGPT is fine. You can access it programmatically over posts and whatnot. You just have to watch your bottom line.
Yes.
You know.
And the ChatGPT, the biggest delineation between I would call it, there's 3 buckets, but there's also online, offline, right? Cloud versus non-cloud.
Right.
And so I think the cloud versus non-cloud, where the line is drawn is on 2 factors of money and security. You know, so it's like if the use case that you were using was going to cost us tons of money to keep running it, AI lab or, you know, GPT4All might be a good solution.
Right.
But also security, if you're putting client data, you're putting anything sensitive in there, security is going to have a tizzy. Offline is probably your best bet.
Yep.
So,
Well, I was going to throw out a third factor to consider. Looking at a stable state of whatever you're working with too. So one of the
Yes.
issues I was having early on with using anything available on the cloud was that the model gets updated, gets tuned,
Yes.
and I don't know what the output is going to be.
Yes.
It's a black box. Very different from being a software developer where you know everything that's good. You know the rules that are
Right.
written into the program, but now it's a black box. You control inputs and you hope for outputs.
Yes.
And so going offline, then you can lock down the version, lock down how it's been trained, and you know you're going to get consistent output.
Right.
Like with the work that you were doing, Thad, you need to know that the output's always going to be in a certain
same.
format, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So I think that'd be another reason to go
Yes.
offline is just to lock it down.
there's 2 additional points I'll make too one is Bill Gates and Sam Altman actually just had he's got a podcast. It's like Bill Gates does. And he did a 4-minute short with Sam Altman. We'll have to post the link. It's actually really interesting to listen to. But effectively he was asking Sam, how does AI work? Like how do these LLMs actually work? And then what's interesting is Sam's response is he's like, actually, we don't really know how a lot of this works. You know, so it's like, because you're talking about all of these different ways which we're training models, and it comes to conclusions itself. It comes almost feels like self-aware.
I mean, they know in the sense of like inferences, right?
Inferences, but like
But how it actually, when you exercise the model,
correct. Like when
the
you're
inferences it makes is up to
It.
the weights and where things
Yeah.
arrive. So it will, just like the human brain, it will run different pathways
Yes.
similarly, but it's not always going to just be like wrote the same password.
That's right.
Pathway every single time.
And it's not like if there's something in the system that traditional engineering, there's a bug, you can go and debug it. You can't.
You can't.
You don't understand. So in that video we'll post, Sam was saying that we're actually getting to the point there's some technologies that are coming out that allows you to almost have a little bit of an X-ray vision into being able to see how the model is making its decisions, which I thought was really fascinating.
That really
and
is
cool.
interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't think we're gonna have audio, but
No, we could. We don't have enough time. We're going to run out of time here, but I was just putting up his background.
Yes.
Just some ambiance.
Bill Gates
for us.
does exist. This is Bill Gates. That's Sam Altman.
yes. Yep.
You never know, though, if something's programmatically generated, or is like that could be AI versions. of
That
those,
could
you
be
know.
a deep fake.
Yes.
It's getting that good. Yeah.
Guys, I have to bring up one thing related to that while we're on it.
Yeah.
So have you guys seen HeyGen? I think I showed you.
I don't think
HeyGen
I have.
before.
No.
Okay. Well, a little bit of education on this. So HeyGen, you can make any kind of AI avatar of yourself. So this is
Oh, yeah,
an
I did
AI
see this.
avatar. Yeah, so I'll
Yes.
show you this, but quickly for Thad. So you can just train it on yourself, and then it's really good if you want to make like some onboarding videos for employees or customers, whatever.
Okay.
So it does that, and you can instantly translate to any language out there, and it still uses your voice, and it remaps your lips so that you're saying different words, and it's really powerful.
It's amazing.
It's really slick. And there was something that happened this week that kind of made me stop and pause and just think about what it means for the future. And I want to get your guys' take on it. Don't want to get into the political side of it, but the Argentinian president Milei was speaking at a global conference, and this is him talking, but it's got mapped to, they used HeyGen to translate it to English.
Today, I am present to inform you that the Western world is facing a significant threat.
Oh my
So-
goodness.
So
Yeah.
he's not he's speaking in Spanish,
Yeah.
but they've changed the lips
Yep.
and translated so
AI
it sounds
did
like
that.
it's AI. That's
And
amazing.
that's his voice. And I'm not going to play more of the audio, but so now,
Wow.
this information's way more accessible to more people. It's susceptible to potentially like
Oh,
a
of
man in
course.
the middle here to manipulate it. And,
Yeah.
But at the same time, I guess translators always could have done that.
Yeah.
But how interesting is it to just like you could give a speech and then it's instantly translated to
Yes.
any language and it's your voice and yeah. So
I've been thinking about this particular issue. I feel as though there, and I haven't done enough research on this. There could be already some startups and businesses trying to fix this or attack this problem. Is there's almost going to have to be some kind of watermark technology to determine if or maybe blockchain to determine is this authentic,
Right.
So because we're going to get into the world of all these deep fakes pretty quick.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
well, I'm going to use this. I'm going to use HeyGen to make a bunch of onboarding videos for one of my products because I just, I can easily script it all out.
Yes.
Right. It's very easy for me to just use speech to narrate something that's happening in the app or whatever, and then transcribe that, put it into 11 Labs, put into HeyGen, get the voice, get the avatar. So now the personalized welcome videos or whatever. So
I want to pause here for a second and turn and ask Evan right behind me, what does he think about this? He's like, crap, I should have been paying attention. So, because you using text, it will take your voice and take
Right.
who you are, and you can just start typing to create videos of yourself talking.
Yeah, I'm wondering what else does it do to create the video? Do you pick an environment
It looks like it.
and then
It's putting you in different environments. I would have to imagine you could pick the environment,
okay.
and it looks like it does the hand gestures too. That's pretty impressive.
yeah, it's supposed to be you in front of a solid background.
Yes.
So like a green screen. And then they'll
Right.
drop you into different environments. And then they do create some basic hand motions and some ticks, verbal ticks, things like that to make it feel real.
That's cool.
I'm going to have to try this.
Yeah, I know.
Just
Seriously.
just get a good headshot.
Can you imagine this? I mean, I don't know how much work you guys do in the studio on this, but I mean, I'm thinking of, for example, my master class.
Yep.
I don't know if this would be a good solution to that, but I mean, it could be something that could help bring the master class to a new direction, add new things very quickly. I can add content super
Yeah,
fast.
definitely.
We'll have different people do it instead of you. I mean,
Yes.
that you could say, well, we've got 3 teachers.
Yes.
Oh, that's interesting because it could still be your thoughts.
It'd still be your thoughts. You
Yes.
can do it, but it could be Nora speaking or just whomever.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yep. Oh, exactly.
I was thinking I was going to use this to create my fake self for our internal meetings to just show up to the meetings I don't want to.
I love it. That's great.
Yeah, and just get it, have it listening to the audio, and then if
Yeah.
it hears like, Bryce, what do you think? It will just
And it'll
understand.
just-
It's getting there to the point because you'll be able to train your own AI eventually
See?
to be like
Yep.
respond how you might respond.
Which will just be a grunt. Bryce, what do you
in
think?
the case of there's certain personalities who we've worked with that have those verbal tics that
So wait a minute. You can do your own though, right? You
Yeah,
can,
yeah, it's
okay.
you.
It's just you could also choose from people. Like you could effectively say I want someone else.
Yeah, you can. These are AI avatars.
Oh,
and
interesting.
they have their own voices, but you can also
Whoa.
use yourself. Yeah, or just animate any photo.
That one's got the bit of a fisheye in the top right corner. It looks a little weird when it's moving. So, but
Yeah, well, it's not a real person.
yeah, it doesn't look like a real person.
Yeah, but also again, translate to any language. Imagine user onboarding or
Yeah,
your
that is-
master class.
that is awesome.
Your master class can now go global. It's not going to be English
That
only.
is sweet.
Yeah.
How much are they charging for this privilege?
It's not bad because I was in there
Pricing,
before and I used it.
$5,000.
and I'm not broke yet. So yeah, I mean it's
Well, that's not bad.
credits, so it's going to be like token usage and minutes. So yeah, so who knows how much you would end up needing if you have to recreate videos or anything like that.
Okay.
But it's in the realm where you're not going to use this as a consumer. You'll use this as a business,
Right.
And it'd be a worthwhile expense.
I was noticing some of the businesses they work with. It's like NVIDIA, Like there's some big names of the people that use them. Like, yeah, Accenture, Amazon.
Yep.
Interesting. Very cool.
McDonald's.
Yeah. They probably have an AI lab in their basement. That's how powers all this stuff. That tying the two together.
Just a big bank of H100s.
Yeah. Well, just for everyone is FYI, I was pretty proud of us at City. We'll post all of the AI lab stuff probably in a blog post or something. But the gist of it is all of that hardware separately. If you were to get H100s, it's equivalent to that kind of hardware. Instead of it was about 50 to 75,000. I'm pricing it out. It was $6,000 to build. So it's within reach for most businesses to try out something like this.
Yep.
So
Cool. Yeah. Well, let's put out a blog post to as a companion to this, because I think it's gonna be hard for the average person to follow.
Yeah.
Might have to put some of our stuff in 2x speed here too. So it's like if you want to listen to it, you can slow it down.
Yes.
But because it was super technical, but I hope some people will do something with it, because it's going to unlock a lot of potential. I don't think it's for everyone. I think there's a small group of people now that can put the time in to really learn it and benefit from it, and you have to be technical in order to do it. Right?
And on the last note here, the other thing I was going to say was AI is changing so fast. By the time we post this blog post on all of this stuff, it'll probably be out of date. And I say that because it's just being careful and knowing that it's shifting sands. And yeah, it's one of those things that they ChatGPT just released Team GPT, like their team version. And it's like some of that was where we were going to head. And it's like, oh, it was released. Great. Maybe we use that.
Yeah. Thad was saying that to me. Thad would like look at user docs for something, and the docs would be a month old. And you're like, I don't know if I can trust this. It's only a month old.
Yes.
So
Right.
You're not sure. It's not like it was 5 years old. It was a month old. Right? Is
Right.
this still relevant? Is this the best way? It's
Yes.
not.
Yeah, it is changing that fast.
Yes.
Yeah, that the parameters, especially at the coding level, it's just changing so fast
Yes.
that you're looking at examples, from a month ago, and it doesn't apply anymore.
Which is nuts.
I mean, for the Python, PyTorch being a really common library that's at the basis for using a lot of these large language models. Some of these models, you have to compile the source of PyTorch off the Git repo daily.
Yeah.
Because there's stuff being injected in there that doesn't exist on the released versions, the production release of those. It's just moving so fast.
Yep.
All right, we gotta get that out of here. He's got a heart out.
Let's get that out. Outro. Hit it. Oh, I thought you were going to keep going.
Oh, no, I'm waiting for
Oh. You didn't ding the gong in the beginning.
I was not asked to. I asked
You want to ding it now?
Sure.
Oh, that was good. Right on the money.
Look at that rhythm.